Hey everybody, this is Cody Knight 22 here. Welcome to Cody Talks episode number 4. This is an episode I'm very excited about. This was the episode that has been planned since day 1 of Cody Talks. Since day 1 of Cody Talks even being an idea, I am re-recording this episode, so I am in a new place in terms of the map. For those of you who are a new audience to Cody Talks, I am recording in Minecraft because it is an easier and higher quality way for me to record something in a podcast format. Audio is very important, but visuals not so much, so you don't have to watch the screen if you don't want to. But this episode of Cody Talks is going to be covering RWBY Volume 2. So, a brief little summary as provided by roosterteeth.com. You know, they make it, so... Team RWBY's back and ready for their second semester at Beacon, an academy that trains the world's strongest fighters. But real life doesn't stop. Between classes and homework, they still have to find time to save the world. And between the White Fang, Roman Torchwick, and a mysterious new trio, they certainly have their work cut out for them. So that's a summary for Volume 2. I'd say plot-wise, that's relatively fair. It feels when you're watching it more like between fighting crime, they somehow go to classes still. But that's a pretty fair plot summary of Volume 2. At the end of Volume 1, or Volume 2 takes place in the second semester at Beacon Academy. You have students arriving, or really students have kind of finished off at this point, arriving in from other kingdoms. You have the White Fang and Roman Torchwick. Their evil plots are moving right along. And it's really, the plot isn't too complicated, I wouldn't say. I don't think I have to elaborate too much on the plot. The safety, by the way, for spoilers, that I will not give a warning before saying something that happened. Episodes 11 and 12, I will say that those are the two that you don't have to have seen. I will not be spoiling those until later on in the show, because I do have a lot of things to say about those two, I do have some things to say about those two episodes in particular that I feel as though pertain really to this volume as a whole. So I will be warning. I will say, hey, I'm going to spoil this. So stop listening then, but until then, you're safe. If you've seen the first 10 episodes, normally I do 3, but because of Worlds of Remnant, which I'll also be talking about later on, 3 weeks before the finale, 3 weeks, including the finale, the 3 final weeks of RWBY is actually those 2 episodes, plus the Worlds of Remnant, which did cover something else, but I can't remember off the top of my head. What did it cover? It covered... Oh, cool. It doesn't tell me. I believe episode 10 was, or episode 3 of Worlds of Remnant was Grim. But that's besides the point. I will be talking about that later on in the show. So, as per usual, let's talk about what I liked about this show. First, what I liked in particular, because I'll be saying things that I liked throughout the entirety of it. First off, I think that this goes without really saying, but the fight coordination, which is, of course, led by Monty Ohm, was incredible this volume. I really think that at this point in time, though, that kind of goes without saying for the show, because Monty Ohm has made a career really off of fight sequences, and he is one of the best at it, I think. And for Red versus Blue fans, we were very, very excited for going into this. For Dead Fantasy fans, we were really excited about going into this. For people that are fans of what Monty has done in the past, so this volume, of course, it kept right on par with the fighting sequences that we've gotten in the past from Monty. I think that the animation actually was better this volume as a whole. I personally believe there was more content, I feel, in this volume versus the last one. I think it shaped out to be 10 or 12 chapters instead of 10. Like the last one was, and I think that overall the animation was better. Some slight adjustments. I won't be talking too much about it because they are on a budget, so I do understand some of the limitations that they do experience because of that. They're on a budget and they're on a time limit. They're not a big, massive studio that has the luxury of doing a lot of this stuff. But one thing that's actually very, very minor that I've seen mentioned a couple of times, not as much as I would have thought, the noses on the characters, on the new character models, you can barely see them against the lighter skinned characters like RWBY. And it's really, really creepy. Actually, it gives off kind of a Voldemort feel. Honestly, I think that was actually a direct comparison that I saw, so I'm stealing that comparison. But I'd honestly say change the character models to match to fix the noses, because it's a little bit unsettling, and I would prefer it if the noses were different. But that's a very minor animation thing that I think reflects overall for it. Thank you so much, Rooster Teeth, for giving us a Yang moment, for giving Yang a moment in time to just to have a real important moment for her. And that's something that I felt was lacking from Volume 1, or that everybody felt was lacking from Volume 1. And then we got it this volume, and we were not disappointed. I don't think we were disappointed. I really enjoyed it. Also, I had something else. Thank you for keeping the fun moments in this volume were really, really fun, I think. You had Zwei come in there in episode number 8. You had a bunch of other characters kind of make their presence felt in this volume. Or you had a new introduction of some new characters, but there were some fun moments in there too, like Zwei, who we were kidding when we. This is technically speaking episode 11 spoiler, but Zwei also a gun, because Mani, it's Mani. Everything's also a gun, and thank you for proving that extends to absolutely everything. I actually really liked the first arc a lot. The first and final arc, I really enjoyed them as a whole a lot. I felt as though episode number 10, and I'm going to this one specifically, was the most important episode, and it was followed up with episode number 11, which I feel as though turned out to be the best episode of the series so far. I got an achievement. I don't play this game much outside of the series. So, I really enjoyed those two arcs in particular. Episode 1, we kind of got a teaser for Yang being developed more as a character, and then as time carried on, we got more development from Yang. I also want to say that I feel as though they were really good moves. They were really good ideas. The production diaries leading up to it, I felt as though it was a really smart idea. I think that next time, maybe get an editor if they can. I'd say get an editor outside of, because I believe it was Daniel. Yeah, Daniel Fabio, I believe, was the one who was in charge of those, and he works on RWBY as well. Next time, I'd advise to maybe, if you want to do it again, which I would love to see it again, honestly, I like to see the makings of things because I'm a nerd, get somebody maybe outside of RWBY to do it, because if you do that, then you will be pretty well off, or you will be better off. You'll have the opportunity to make more of them, I personally feel. So I'd say maybe, it's just, and take it or leave it, but get somebody outside of it, and editing wise, see if, there's some people that work at Rooster Teeth, see if anybody can do it. And Worlds of Remnant is the other thing that occurred outside of the strictly canon of RWBY, and I really liked Worlds of Remnant. It was a good way to give them time to catch up on animation and keep us interested week in, week out. So as opposed to taking a full week off and just saying there's nothing coming out this week, they gave us Worlds of Remnant, which they gave us Worlds of Remnant, which really did fill that void of RWBY very, very well. It kept us involved. Kept us interested. To give us some world building facts that may not have come up quite so well. The only thing that's tricky is that they actually covered some of the world building things that they talked about in Worlds of Remnant in the actual canon, and I found that to be a questionable decision ultimately, because Grimm is the big one. They had a little bit on Grimm, and then they had a little bit on Grimm and Worlds of Remnant. I thought that decision could be seen as questionable, but I don't think it's possible for us to know too much about Grimm at this point, especially because we really still don't know a whole lot about them. But it's a really, really cool idea. Personal request is like, for the future, do something on semblances, maybe go more into depth on the things that you've already kind of brushed over. But it's a good way to lay foundation for things for the future, because I know that you're running on a tighter schedule. We all know that you're running on a bit of a tighter schedule and a bit of tighter manpower. So I enjoy them. I would absolutely love to see the return of Worlds of Remnant for next volume, or replace the production diaries with those. That would also be really, really cool to see. Next thing that I do want to talk about, I really think that they did some pretty good or they did a really good job at wrapping up some of the foreshadowing that they had done in the past this volume. One of the things which I will not go into depth about because it is covered in one of the final 2 episodes. But we got an answer to the yellow trailer, and actually part of the volume 1 opening as well. We got an answer to some of the questions that we had from there. Penny's a robot. Everybody acts surprised. I think that's another, like, that's kind of the same deal as Blake being a faunus. Everybody 1, 2, 3 surprised. And nobody was surprised. That's the joke. But I mean, overall, they gave us some good conclusions, but they gave us a lot of things. But they gave a lot to work with for the future, and I'm excited for the future of the show. I will always be excited for the future of the show because it has more potential than it doesn't. It always will. There's a lot that they can do with this world. There's a lot that they can do with the creative mind of Monty Oum really heading this project. And, credit to everybody else that works on this. Gray Haddock, Miles Luna, Carrie Shawcross. I almost said Monty Shawcross, but Carrie Shawcross. Full credit to these people. They do a wonderful job. And so that's one of the biggest things, is that this volume, once again, has demonstrated that this show has a lot of potential. And if handled 100% correctly, and, it's hard for them to do that, but if handled 100% correctly, who knows what could happen? I'm excited to see what could happen. All right, so now on to the more critical aspect of the show. And this episode is tricky because as I review the critical aspect of this particular episode, I realize that it sounds as though I'm ragging on RWBY a lot more than I'm praising it. I really like a lot of things that RWBY does. I think that RWBY does a lot of things well. The problem is the fact that I can point to the thing is, I want this show can be a lot, as I said, it has a lot more potential than it doesn't. And I'm not saying it from the standpoint of, oh, well, the show is still young. I'm saying it from the standpoint of there are still issues that are very apparent with how the show is being done that, if cleaned up, can be so much more, can make this show into so much more than it actually is. And this show's already a lot. I really, really enjoy this show quite thoroughly. So the critical side on this thing is going to sound lengthy, and it is lengthy, but these are all, I believe they're all valid complaints that I have seen made multiple times. But this is what I believe to be true. So first up, I want to talk about and this is really, I said I really like the 3rd arc, and I really like this 1st arc a lot. Where this volume, I think, saw pretty much most of, if not all of its issues, was in the 2nd arc. Or at least made it more apparent, was in the 2nd arc. 2nd arc was the Beacon Ball arc. And that arc covered the Beacon Ball, and it covered Pyrrha, and covered John, it covered Neptune, Weiss, namely, or Yang and Blake as well, namely, as kind of like the main people that received a screen time benefit of that one. Also, excluding Team Crime as well, which is Cinder, Roman, Mercury, and Emerald. So excluding those guys, those are the main people that they covered. One of my biggest issues with this arc was romance. And here's the thing. I know that there's probably going to be some people out there that think that I'm complaining about romance because I didn't get my ships canon, my OTPs canon. First off, my OTPs changed really on a weekly basis this volume, it seemed. But Akros has always remained at the top for me, and that did become canon. My issue with this romance was, at best, describing it at best, it was rushed and it was forced. That's putting it at best. In all honesty, it was the worst part about this volume. The romance was done in a way that immediately was questionable. They decided to do a love triangle with a character that had been introduced with one of the main characters in question was a character that had literally been introduced 4 episodes ago in Neptune. Jean, we've had him since day one. Although he was Vomit Boy day 1, we've had Jean since day 1. We've had White since day 1. We've had Pyrrha since episode 3 of last volume. So that's pretty good amount of time for the rest of the characters involved with this. But you're deciding to do a love triangle, and one of the name pieces is somebody introduced 4 episodes ago. That's not enough time to give any kind of a romantic spotlight to. It really isn't. So that's really namely where rush comes into play. Then you want to bring into question the fact that it was a love triangle. How many times have we seen a love triangle done? I mean in modern media. How many times have we seen love triangles done? And the better question is, how many times have they been done well? The percentage, the ratio of love triangles to love triangles done well is so low because love triangle is never a good idea in the first place. And doing a love triangle, you're basically saying, okay, guys, we have to get this 150% correct, because if we don't, it's going to be bad. There really is no other way about a love triangle. It's not entertaining anymore. It's just, it takes up time if it's not done well. And it takes up time. It takes up valuable time, honestly. And it's just boring sometimes. And I hate to say it, but this love triangle was really, it wasn't even done halfway decently. It was not done halfway well, because it was forced and it was rushed. So you have this really bad love triangle now. You have a bad love triangle, and it's eating up, most importantly, it's eating up screen time in a show that doesn't have anything screen time to give. One of the best things about romance is the fact that it is not something that you need to force to a series. Romance can be something that you can build the most naturally. You don't have to go in with an idea of, okay, so these two characters are going to get together, though you can certainly build them that way. I believe Jean and Pierre, they're practically married in this show, and they only just now got together canon-wise this volume, but they're practically married. And by practically, I mean they are married and all but the ring. And you have these characters, you can build. So that was a pretty obvious decision. But then you have everything else, and you don't have to force that in there. I mean, you can just let it happen. Just have these. And I'm bringing this up as an example, not for the sake of anything, but one of my friends actually brought it up. Chris, Sinister Parrot, on Twitter, if you want to follow him. He said he thought that the best development that you got romantically this volume was not a part of that Beacon and Ball arc, but it was not a part of the romance thing. It was probably with Blake and Yang. And he's not a shipper. I mean, he doesn't partake in this stuff, but he just said that's how he honestly felt, was with that scene where you had Yang stand up to Blake and force her into just kind of like this admission. That showed a lot more care from Yang to Blake. That's completely natural, and you can take that in a romantic plot, or you can't. I mean, or you don't have to. Weiss and Blake also believe, there was a lot of moments where Weiss proved that she was looking out for Blake. That's big. So these are all things that happen naturally. None of this was forced in there. But the actual romance that they decided to do was. And that really hurts them, because you could have done that romance. And plus, it felt like a throwaway. I don't think, it's like Weiss isn't with Neptune. It really doesn't feel like Weiss is with Neptune. It does feel like Jean's with Pyrrha, but it's felt like that really since day one. So not much is going to change my opinions there. But it also, it feels like, but it doesn't feel like Blake is with Sun. I wasn't even entirely sure. I'm still not entirely sure, honestly, about that whole ordeal. Is Blake with Sun or is she not? Because I can take that either way right now, and I am taking it from the direction of she's not, because it didn't feel like it. So I don't know. And plus, she's shown a pretty significant lack of interest in Sun romantically since day one, and I really like the way that they played off of Sun in Volume 1 as well. Not so much this volume, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So that, to me, this volume was that the romance really brought everything down a little bit. Whenever it was happening, I was not interested in it. I wanted it to be over with, because it was eating up time away from things. And some of my favorite moments did come from that arc. I loved the Juniper dance because it was fun. I loved the Cinder fighting. I loved, Blake and Yang's moment in that library, honestly, is one of my favorite moments of the series so far, because it was such good development for both characters. It was such good development, and it was really, really well done. So that scene remains one of my favorites. But notice how it has nothing directly to do with the romance. That's not a coincidence. That is just, that's what happened. That's the way that, things played out. And I would love for there to be, for RT to cut out the romance. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people that want to see romance happen next volume, or there's some people that I've talked to that's kind of like, well, it's in the show now they have to include it. I don't feel that way at all. I feel as though the best route that you can take is to not include romance at all. But if you're going to do it right. It's a very, very simple request, but it can be very difficult to do, because romance, it could be tricky for non-romance writers. And I think that, I don't know if Miles and Carrie fall into that. But the next thing that I want to talk about is character development. And this is weird to put in after the praising part, because I do have some things to praise about it, but there's also some things to criticize about it as well, which is why I stuck it in after the thing, because nothing, it's not 100% yes, but it's also not 100% no. So I'm just going to read off a brief list of names, characters-wise, and I'll explain to you what these characters all have in common. Nora, Nora Ren. Nora Ren, Scarlet, Sage, Coco, Fox, Yatohashi, Velvet, Professor Port, and Professor. Okay. So those are 9 characters that I just listed off, and with the exception of Scarlet and Sage, all of them were introduced this volume, which I do have issues with as well. They were shown in the title credits. Scarlet and Sage deserved, at bare minimum, an introduction this volume. And they did not receive one. Coffee did. I mean, I'm happy with the way that Coffee was introduced, but you need more. You show them in the openings, deliver on that promise. You're saying you're going to open with them. Deliver on that promise. Like, the most screen time that we got out of Scarlet and Sage was from that opening credit sequence. But oh well. So Scarlet, but with the exception of Scarlet and Sage, all those characters have been introduced up to this point. But all of those characters also have one very important thing in common. They're secondary characters who have yet to receive a moment to themselves. And I'm not saying a whole story arc, because if I wanted to say a whole story arc, there's a lot of people that I can include on that list. I would actually argue that Pyrrha belongs on this list as a character who has yet to really receive a moment, because I'd argue that her moment with Jean didn't really feel like a big moment to me. And Neptune as well, but he got a lot of screen time. It's hard for me to say that he didn't have at least one moment in there, but I'd argue that Pyrrha and Neptune also kind of belong in that list. But these are all secondary characters. They have yet to have a moment. Jean is another secondary character, but he has had 2 arcs. He hasn't had 2 moments. He's had 2 arcs. The math does not shape up there. Jean is here's my issue with this is I actually like Jean as a character. I am not one of those people that hates Jean. I know that there's a lot of people that do. I like him a lot less this volume, but I like him, and I liked him a lot last volume. Jean is a character who came in as a very raw character, who showed a lot of growth, and I know that it was his character is especially relatable to some of the people that watch the show. So I'm not coming here to bash on Jean. I'm coming here to really, and I don't want to say bash. I'm here to criticize the writing surrounding him. But he's a secondary character. There is not a single argument that you can make that can justify him getting 2 story arcs in 2 volumes, because with the time limit that they have. If you were to say that they had a season, each season for them was 15. Let's go 15 episodes. Each episode is half an hour, 23 minutes minus commercial time. You want to say that they have that kind of time? You can give Jean 2 arcs in 2 seasons. That's not a problem. But they don't. You need to focus a lot of development on the primary characters. RWBY did not get an arc to herself. We really did not get a whole lot of direct character development with RWBY, but we did get a lot of indirect character with RWBY. A lot of the offhanded comments that she made, her losing Crescent Rose and then getting taken hostage, that is actually an indicative of something that Monty said a long time ago, was that he had Crescent Rose before RWBY, and that kind of shaped his character that's very weapon reliant. And that was an accident, but a happy accident at that. So RWBY, that's the development that she needs to work on, is without Crescent Rose. Blake got good time again. Weiss got a lot of good time. Yang, I think, I'd say Yang had the most, probably, character development out of all the characters this particular volume, which is by no means necessary a problem. I mean, that's really good. Yang had out of the main cast, had by far the least amount of development. So those characters are, and plus I'd also say that as the main antagonist, Team Crime would be excluded from the realm of people that you can that start problems if you spend too much time on them, because you can't. So there's those characters. But apart from that, there is no reason that Jean should get 2 story arcs, because he's a secondary character. He's not the main. He's not a protagonist of the story. I mean, he is on the side of RWBY. So, and as people would say, he's on Team Good Guy. He's not on Team Crime. So, but that doesn't justify it, because you know what? Nora and Ren, they've been around since day one. Pyrrha, she's been around a while. We were actually promised a Pyrrha arc, and we really didn't get one. That wasn't a Pyrrha arc. Are you kidding me? There was barely any time spent on Pyrrha in that arc versus the other people that are there. We're still waiting on Nora and Ren. Scarlet and Sage, they didn't even get an introduction. there's a lot that you can do with Velvet and her relationship with Blake. I would have liked to see that played along a little bit more, because I think that, Blake right now, to me, it looks as though Blake respects Velvet a lot because she wears, she's a fondness out in public. And like, that's just something that Blake wants to be. She aspires to be. So there's a lot that you can do there. Why was that not played upon more? Jean has 2 arcs. If they do another Jean arc next volume, first off, a lot of people are probably going to drop off the show. I won't drop off the show if they do another Jean arc, but they're going to screw themselves. They're going to completely screw themselves if they do another Jean arc next volume, because they don't have that kind of time. Jean needs to, he can have more moments. I mean, I'm not excluding him from being able to have more real moments, real big character moments for this guy. Minor takes up a minute for that particular moment. It could be a speech. It could be encouraging one of his teammates. It could be fighting. It could be a fight. It takes up a minute. That's not a huge deal. But another arc, you can't do that. They don't have the kind of time to do that. And I hate to say this because it is Miles, but part of me does wonder if writer syndrome, or if I'm writing my own character, there's a fancy word for it, but I'm just going to call it writing my own character syndrome. I'm wondering if that's coming into play at all. And I really hate to say that, but nothing else would really make sense, because Jean didn't need that arc. Not to mention the fact that it did less for his character than it did for him. He became the nice guy, the guy that's entitled to something, it seemed, with the fact that he constantly pursued Weiss, despite the fact that she said no several times. That really did not paint him in a pretty light. I mean, I'm not super involved in like in a lot of things that would relate to this, but I believe that there's one way that you can say no, and there's one way that you should accept no. If it comes out and it's like, hey, I like you, want to go do this thing? No. Okay, then. You might be crushed, but there's nothing that you can do, especially if there is literally a 0% interest rate shown. That wasn't there with Jean. He kept going after Weiss. He kept doing that. And it bothered me watching it. I was like, I don't know. The only scene that I still have never seen was Jean's song. I saw the opening of it and to Weiss, and I skipped it because I was like, I'm not dealing with this episode. It was a funny joke. It was a funny joke the first time that it happened this volume, when Yang patted Jean's head and said, next time. But now it's just annoying. And please stop. Like, please stop. That didn't happen. They kept going with the Jean thing. And not to mention the fact that Jean's affection for Weiss really started off as a joke. And it was a joke all the way up until the point that they decided that it wasn't a joke anymore. And as dumb as it sounds, it was not done a smooth transition, and it wasn't even made to a point where it seemed believable to a certain extent. I mean, Jean talking with Ren when Ren isn't wearing any clothes, yeah, that didn't feel serious to me. That didn't feel like an actual thing to me. It wasn't until Pierce showed up that it actually felt like a serious moment, and then it felt like a serious moment for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't done. Jean wasn't handled well this volume, because I think Miles tried to do too much with his own character. Focus on RWBY. Give us some Nora and Ren. I want to know what's up with Nora and Ren. I really do. I like these characters a lot. I wanted to be introduced to Scarlet and Sage before this volume was up. There is no excuse that can justify what they did. There just isn't. And, it sucks, but it's true. Neptune received a lot of screen time too. I don't think it was really to any kind of a positive benefit. I also don't think it was to negative benefit for Neptune. He was just kind of there. And he didn't really receive any serious character development. And I think that the Beacon arc has a big moment in the show because it shows what could have been. Neptune was talking to Jean, and Jean, first off, there's a lot of contradictory writing in that particular scene. And it was where, you have Pyrrha, you'd see me for how I am. How could you turn down Weiss Schnee? It's like, do you guys not realize it's literally, you just got to look a few lines back in the script and you can realize what you did there. It contradicts. I think I understood what he meant by it. That disturbs me a little bit, but I understood what he meant by it, but it still is really contradictory writing. And it takes a little bit of analysis to realize kind of like, what? But, he's talking to Neptune and it's like, why are you doing it? I can't dance. That was a good laugh. It was a pretty good laugh. But it perfectly summarized, I think, a lot of this volume. And what that was, I'll go into later on. But I will say it right now because later on will be the spoiler segment. But it really did go into a pretty fair amount. It was, you have an opportunity to differentiate yourself. You have an opportunity to not only have a really big character building moment, but to show something big within this world. What I can't dance. It's instead of I can't dance here. It's really really simple. Why would you turn down White Schneid? I like Sun, or I'm actually I'm not straight. I'm pansexual is the one that fits my headcanon for Neptune, but I'm gay. Let's say that. There you go. There's a chance to deal with issues. There's a chance to differentiate yourself as a show, to have a big moment, to stand out, to prove that they don't have to own up to anything. They don't have to live up to corporate limitations. They don't have to do it. But yet they trade it out for a joke. It was pretty funny. Not funny enough to justify it. And they did that a couple of times. But that arc had a lot of issues with it. And I don't think that there's anything that I can point to that was meant to be the focal point of that arc that really I enjoyed, or that I enjoyed more than anything else. Blake and Yang's thing, I don't think was a focal point of that arc, but it happened and it was absolutely important for the show. Kind of sucks. The next thing that I do want to talk about, and I might be forgetting something in this episode, and if I am, oops, but I'm human, so sue me. But is episode 12. So this is going to be spoiler territory. If you do not want to hear the spoilers, I'm going to give my rating of RWBY what I think right now. And my rating of RWBY is honestly an 8. It's a good show. It's not bad. It's not bad. It could be so much better, and it is frustrating to watch. I'm not a professional writer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not even what many would consider is a properly educated writer from the manner of I'm still in high school. In fact, as on my record, I only have a middle school education due to a lot of technicalities. But, it's frustrating to watch as somebody who writes and to see opportunity after opportunity go right past them and for them to trade them out every single time for jokes. And they do it. Time in and time out, they do it. And it is infuriating to watch because it's so close to being so much better than it is. And one of the main reasons for this shapes up to be what I'm going to finish off with, really, and it's going to be elaborating on a point that I brought up earlier. In RWBY Volume 2, you had the finale episode, and this is where spoilers come in, so this is what I said. Stop listening if you haven't seen the finale yet. The finale, well, first off, episode 10 was the single most important episode that they have done so far, with the character development that you got out of Weiss, out of Blake, out of Yang, and really indirectly out of RWBY as well. You had these big moments for these characters. You had the defining moments for their characters up to this point in the series. It was crucial. It's the most important episode. It's not necessarily the best. I believe that the best was actually an episode later. It was the most important episode of the series so far. Follow that up, episode number 11, my bad. Episode number 11 was the train sequence. And in that one, you have RWBY losing. You actually have RWBY losing to, you didn't really see much out of RWBY herself, but you had RWBY coming up and they fought, Yang fought Neo. She lost to Neo, who, oh my God, I love Neo so much. You had Blake, and she beat Torchwick because he's a cocky ass and he absolutely could have wiped the floor with her, but he wasn't expecting dust and he wasn't expecting her to even come close to beating him. So he's an ass and kind of sort of let Blake win in a sense. Then you had Weiss lose to the White Fang Lieutenant, showed fallibility from Team RWBY. And then at the end of the episode, and it was, in my opinion, that was the best episode so far, not necessarily for the fallibility standpoint, but for the just how good that episode wound up being, and that you got character development, you got fighting, you got everything out of that episode, everything that I like about this show. And then you set yourself up for a huge moment in episode 12. And then you also had the black-haired woman, who I'm going to refer to as a black-haired woman for right now. You had this big moment at the end of the episode. The train comes crashing into the city, and you have this moment, and you see the people. They're surrounded by Grimm, and it's just terrifying. And, oh my God, there's going to be loss here. There's going to be something that happens here, and there's going to be something that Team RWBY cannot prevent. And, in fact, they could potentially not die because it's way too early in the show to kill off protagonists, but you could have a lot of mayhem caused, and you could have a lot of trouble really caused there, and you can play a lot off of this. And episode 12 was a very large or then you get to the finale, the actual finale. It featured some incredible music, Caffeine. It featured some and really awesome. I actually really enjoyed the fighting that came from Team Coffee, and Blind Fox is my that's my favorite thing ever. And if it's my favorite headcanon until hopefully it becomes my favorite canon piece. You had Juniper kind of show up, really do nothing. You had Neptune and Sun just there, and it was one really big, awesome, epic fight. And it had none of the payoff from anything that they had set up the time before. I don't mean that you have to create models and kill them, create character models and kill them. I mean writing wise. At the end of it, everything was all fine and dandy. And that's it. That's RWBY Volume 2. A potential to have so much more happen. A potential to have this big moment of payoff traded out for a shitty joke. Well, the finale was. Anyways, the shitty was really, I think it was a bad joke. Some of the jokes were all right, but you had it. It was right there. And watching it, I was like, this is a good episode. But I didn't feel satisfied. And then in the credits scene, you have the black-haired woman, all the suspense building up, although we all kind of didn't know, but all the suspense that you could have built up around her. Oh, what's happening? Oh, she's Yang's mom. And also a very, very blatant copy-paste of Yang's character model. Okay. I guess instead of payoff from all the things that you guys had set up before, I guess we're just going to get it all now. We're going to get, I guess, immediate payoff, which is not always a good thing for the black-haired woman. It was especially not needed to have that payoff, but it happened. And I guess that we're just going to have to, I guess that this just happened. The finale was, I think, that the worst episode was Arrivals for the worst episode of this volume. And it's the worst not because it was a bad episode, and that sounds weird, but it was the worst because it could have been a lot better. And scratch that, not could have been. It should have been a lot better. And it wasn't. And that comes down to and that is not anything that really, I think, it's not something that's naturally cured by time. It's something that's cured by improvement in writing. And it's cured through really everything but natural improvement. Just like this is not something that's going to be fixed just because it goes on longer. There has to be a proactive steps in the right direction to make these changes. Because, this volume was good. This volume was also, I would like to point out, this volume was infinitely better than volume 1. I think that no matter what way you want to spin it, it shapes out to be so much better than volume 1. Very, very satisfying. But at the same time, it should have been a lot better. Not could have been, it should have been a lot better. And it wasn't. There are frustrations watching this show. It is still a really good show. It still has a lot of promise. It's why I say it's an 8. You know why? Because I enjoy the show. I enjoy the show a lot. It may not sound like it, but I really do. It's just the things that are frustrating are very easily remedied. Romance, cut it out. There you go. You already have a much better volume 2. Finale, have the payoff. Show RWBY, write RWBY in as their people died. We couldn't save like a lot of people here. Have that emotional payoff. Have every episode be not like episode 10, but be like episode number 9 even. I'm just going to go to episode number 9. Have it be like that. Character development, fun things, good jokes, big moments. You had episodes 8, 9, 10, and 11 were so good. I also really enjoyed, I'm probably in the minority, but I also really enjoyed episodes 1 through 4 a lot. But they have to do more. It's simple as that. I will probably continue to watch this show for a very long time because I am a big Rooster Teeth fan and I'm a big RWBY fan especially. And there's so much that you can do with the world that I don't think that the potential of the show will ever be met. Not because they won't. I don't think that the writers are good enough, but just because the show has so much potential. That's just the way it is. But all in due time. All in due time. And that's going to conclude this episode. I already did give my rating, but just to, once again to reiterate, I'd say 8 out of 10 for this show. I absolutely recommend that you watch it. Don't get as frustrated as I did, though. I have to make this series. So I looked for things like this, and I found things, unfortunately. But absolutely go watch this series. But with that, that is going to... I keep saying that. That is going to conclude this episode of Cody Talks. Tune in. Actually... well, yesterday, I guess, Cody Talks fan fiction did come out, so that show is not dead just yet. I hope that the format changes don't throw you through a loop. The next episode of Cody Talks that is currently planned out is Cody Talks episode number 5. It will be for Carmilla, the YouTube series about a gay vampire. Really, really gay vampire. And her really, really gay roommate. And it's not porn. It's better. So do watch that. Stay tuned for any new content that will come your way from me. And I will see all of you the next time. Bye.